A driven CEO, Amelia Rhodes, boards a late-night flight after a draining business trip. Exhausted and emotionally spent, she unintentionally falls asleep on the shoulder of a kind stranger. Daniel, a single father traveling home to his young daughter. The unexpected comfort sparks something gentle and unfamiliar in her heart. Amelia and Daniel begin to talk mid-flight. She learns about his struggles as a single dad, his small-town life, and his quiet strength. Their simple conversation feels more real than any boardroom meeting Amelia has ever had. Upon landing, Amelia rushes off for her connecting flight, realizing too late that she doesn't even know his last name. She feels an ache she can't explain. Daniel, meanwhile, tells his daughter about the kind but tired lady who reminded him that kindness still exists. Weeks later, Amelia visits a local community project her company is sponsoring, only to find Daniel there, working as the project's architect. Shock and joy intertwine as their paths cross again, and both realize it wasn't coincidence. Amelia learns to slow down and reconnect with what truly matters: love, compassion, and second chances. Daniel's warmth and his daughter's innocence heal parts of her she never knew were broken. The CEO who once lived for success finds something far richer: a family. She had closed $1 billion deal that afternoon but felt emptier than ever, her reflection in the airplane window staring back like a stranger wearing her success as armor. Amelia Rhodes, the CEO everyone admired yet no one truly knew, boarded the midnight flight from San Francisco to Chicago with a phone full of unread messages and a heart full of exhaustion. The hum of the aircraft blended with her thoughts until she couldn't tell which was louder, the engines or the silence inside her chest. She didn't notice the man who took the seat beside her until he apologized softly for bumping her arm. His voice, calm and unhurried, carried no trace of the constant rush that defined her world. He smiled once, gently, before settling in, and she caught a faint scent of cedar and laundry soap, oddly grounding, like home. Though she hadn't felt that word in years, she tried to focus on the documents glowing from her laptop screen, numbers blurring into meaningless shapes, and before she knew it, her eyes grew heavy. Somewhere between the clouds and the hum of altitude, sleep claimed her, and her head, without permission, found rest on the stranger's shoulder. He didn't move. Daniel Miller, a single dad returning home after pitching a low-budget housing project, had learned to hold still when life handed him small, quiet moments. He watched her breathing steady, saw the exhaustion that even perfect makeup couldn't hide, and for some reason, he smiled. When she woke hours later, horrified, apologizing under her breath, he simply said, "It's okay. You looked like you needed it." It was the first sentence anyone had said to her in months that wasn't about profit margins. Something in his tone, a kindness without agenda, made her heart falter. They began to talk, tentatively at first, then freely, as if altitude had stripped away their defenses. She learned he was an architect designing affordable homes, raising his 6-year-old daughter Lily alone after his wife passed away 2 years earlier. "She calls me every night to make sure I brush my teeth," he said, chuckling, and Amelia laughed, for real, the kind that surprises you with how unfamiliar it sounds. When she told him about her company, her success, and her loneliness disguised as leadership, he didn't look impressed or intimidated, just listened. That night, at 30,000 feet, between strangers and stars, two people from opposite worlds met somewhere in the middle, in honesty, fatigue, and quiet connection. Before the flight ended, he offered her a blanket when he noticed her shiver, and she whispered thank you like it meant more than the words aloud. When dawn painted the cabin gold and the pilot announced their descent, Amelia realized she hadn't checked her phone in 6 hours, and the world hadn't ended. When they landed, reality reclaimed its pace. Emails buzzed, assistants called, and Daniel's backpack slung over his shoulder looked almost out of place in the blur of suits and briefcases. "Nice flying with you," he said, smiling as if they'd known each other longer than a single flight. She nodded, her throat tight, unable to find anything clever to say. He turned to leave, and as she watched him vanish into the moving crowd, a strange ache followed. It wasn't love, not yet, just the haunting recognition that something had shifted. Over the next week, meetings filled her hours, but her thoughts kept circling back to the man with kind eyes and a voice that sounded like peace. She wondered if he ever thought about her too. In a world where everything could be tracked, planned, and predicted, it infuriated her that she didn't even know his last name. That night, while preparing for a major investor gala, she looked out over the glittering skyline and whispered to her reflection, "You fell asleep on a stranger's shoulder, and somehow that felt more real than anything tonight." Daniel, miles away, tucked Lily into bed as she asked, "Daddy, are you smiling?" He nodded, unsure how to explain to a 6-year-old that a woman he barely knew had reminded him what gentleness felt like. Life carried them forward in parallel lines until fate, patient and deliberate, decided to draw them together again. 3 weeks later, Amelia visited a small-town community site her company was sponsoring as part of a corporate social responsibility initiative and affordable housing project near Chicago. Her assistant handed her a clipboard as she stepped onto the lot, the scent of sawdust and fresh paint cutting through the crisp air. "The lead architect should be here shortly," someone said, and when she turned toward the voice, her breath caught. Standing across the site, hard hat slightly askew, blueprints rolled under his arm, was Daniel. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then he smiled, slow and incredulous. "Amelia," he called, laughter in his voice. "I didn't think CEOs visited construction sites." She laughed, stunned. "And I didn't think architects stubbled as in-flight pillows." The crew around them glanced curiously, but for that moment, it felt like the world had paused again, like the universe had rewound time just to make sure they got a second chance. They walked the site together, and for the first time in years, Amelia forgot her title, forgot to check her watch. She asked questions about the project, but mostly about him. He told her how he designed each home to give single parents something stable, something hopeful. She listened, deeply, to every word. Later that afternoon, Lily arrived, running toward her father with a drawing clutched in her hand. "Daddy, look!" she shouted. Daniel scooped her up, and Amelia felt her heart soften watching them. Lily's eyes sparkled as she turned to Amelia and said, "Are you Daddy's friend from the airplane?" The world froze. Daniel blinked in surprise, and Amelia knelt down, smiling. "I guess I am." The little girl giggled and offered her drawing, a crayon picture of a house with 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a smiling sun. "That's our dream house," Lily said proudly. For the first time in years, Amelia felt tears sting her eyes, not from exhaustion but from something purer, as the ache of rediscovering what mattered. Over the following weeks, she found reasons to visit the site again, official reasons at first, then smaller excuses that fooled no one, least of all Daniel. They'd talk over coffee in paper cups, watching workers build dreams from wood and cement. He'd tell her about Lily's school projects. She'd confess how lonely boardrooms could be. Their worlds began to overlap, quietly, naturally. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting everything in amber, she said, "You know, I've spent my whole life building something big, but maybe I've been building the wrong thing." Daniel looked at her, his expression soft. "Maybe you just needed to find someone who reminds you what a home feels like." That sentence stayed with her. Slowly, subtly, she began to change. Late nights at the office replaced by early mornings walking through quiet neighborhoods, learning how to breathe again. Her employees noticed her smile more, her tone gentler. Her assistant whispered that the boss finally seemed a broken bar human again. She didn't mind. One Saturday, Daniel invited her to dinner at his small but cozy home. Lily greeted her at the door wearing a paper crown and declared, "You're the queen tonight." Amelia laughed so hard she nearly cried. The table was set with mismatched plates and candles that smelled faintly of vanilla. It wasn't fancy, but it felt more genuine than any restaurant she dined in. Over pasta and laughter, Daniel told stories about his late wife, about grief and resilience, about choosing joy again. Amelia listened, holding her wineglass loosely, realizing that strength wasn't in perfection but in presence. After dinner, Lily fell asleep on the couch, and Amelia found herself looking at the child with tenderness she didn't know she still possessed. "She's lucky to have you," she said softly. Daniel shook his head. "No, I'm lucky to have her. She reminds me every day that love doesn't end, it just changes shape." Something inside Amelia cracked open, then a quiet surrender. She reached for his hand, and he didn't let go. Months passed, and the project reached completion. On opening day, as families received keys to their new homes, Amelia stood beside Daniel and Lily, realizing that success wasn't about profit or power anymore. It was about purpose. Reporters asked for quotes, but her mind wandered to that first night and the hum of an airplane, a stranger's shoulder, and the unexpected kindness that had rewritten her story. Later, when the crowd dispersed and the sun melted into the horizon, Daniel turned to her and said, "You know, I never believed in coincidences." She smiled. "Me neither." He grinned. "So what do we call this?" She thought for a moment, then whispered, "A miracle disguised as turbulence." He laughed, and she joined him, feeling lighter than she had in years. That night, as they walked hand in hand through the finished neighborhood, children's laughter echoing in the distance, Amelia knew she'd found something worth more than every contract she'd ever signed, a life built not on ambition but on love, kindness, and the courage to start again. And when Lily ran ahead, turning back to shout, "Come on, Mommy," Amelia froze for a second, surprised by the word "day," then smiled through her tears and whispered, "I'm coming." It wasn't just a story about a CEO or a single dad anymore. It was about two broken people who accidentally found healing in each other's ordinary grace. It was proof that even at 30,000 feet, above all the noise, fate sometimes whispers the softest beginnings. The world below may chase speed and status, but up there, where one heart leaned against another, Amelia Rhodes learned the greatest truth of all: the right shoulder at the right moment can change an entire life.